the meeting.
All right, we're good.
So welcome to the October 2nd nominations or appointment committee meeting. Just before we get started, just a little brief introductions. I'm Marcia Goodman Henderson. I think I know Jane, definitely. I will be conducting the meeting. I just want my fellow council mates to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Wanda Negron. I'm the new district city council for District 5. And it's a pleasure to meet you because it's a pleasure to be here for my first time.
Nice meeting you. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, meaning in person.
Yes.
I've heard of you, but hopefully one day we can meet in person.
You heard of me.
Great things. I've read great things about you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Chris Miller, councilman for District 6.
Hey, Chris. Yes, you are my rep. I believe I've met you in person, but we haven't been able to have a substantive conversation. So hopefully one day again, we may be able to shake hands and talk.
That's good. And you're on 6th Street?
That's correct. North 6th.
Right.
My home, that's my town.
And if you recall, Shane was part of our training that we received on the charter board just recently. So I'm not going to, our first question is, are you able to regularly attend board meetings? I'm not going to ask you that question because I know as chair of the board you do. But if you could tell us, like, what the charter board has done well and what could be improved upon?
What has the charter board done well? I think we've done a good job enforcing the charter. Obviously, we have no control over when we do enforcements, other than when it's presented to us. I've always said to people that we are a very reactive board. We do have that option where we could, at times, if necessary, take on actions on our own without there being a complaint. But I've always been cognizant myself of, even before I became chair, of our budget. And I'm very conservative when it comes to spending. So I haven't given the okay to the board, and I don't believe any board members, current board member, are willing to undertake or personal investigations. And secondly, I don't think we've seen a need to do it. But to go back to answering your question, I think we fulfilled our mandate as it pertains to enforcement over the years, and I think we've been resilient in doing so. We've come up against many tough opponents, people who simply want to neglect our charter. But we've stood tall and again fulfilled our mandate. So I think we've done a fantastic job in enforcing the provisions of our charter. What we could improve upon, and this is a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. When I joined the charter board, I shortly after joining, I realized that there is a very fallacious perception, outside perception of the board. I believe a lot of persons have this idea that the charter board is somewhat of a government hawk that goes after bad actors at any occasion. That's again a fallacious perception. And when I became chair, I explained to the board that that perception is something that, if given a chance, if given a simple opportunity, I would like to change that. When our mayor was running for office, I was very excited about the idea that he had of bringing everyone together, working, extending an arm to city council, extending an arm to the different civil organizations in our communities, and he fulfilled that. But I was disappointed because we weren't given that opportunity. The charter board was not extended an olive branch, so to speak. So we haven't necessarily had that opportunity to have that sit down with the mayor and try to change that perception. We are not trying to go after people. We're simply trying to do our job by fulfilling our mandate to enforce the provisions of the charter. So that is something that, if given the opportunity, I would definitely like to change. It is something that's been bothering me for years. When I hear people talk badly about or personal approach to enforcement, as if it's political. So I think that we have to do a better job to educate not only our representatives but also the public. But we need assistance in doing that. We cannot do it on our own. Even if we were to have the full complement of 5 members, we would still have to work with City Council. We would still have to work with the administration and changing that perception, in educating or representatives and the public. And I believe that would definitely change the perception as it relates to the charter board. That would also help in deterrence. I have to give, again, I don't mean to keep blabbering on, but I have to give City Council a lot of credit. Over the last 4 years or more, we've seen complaints drop drastically. Also, we have to give a lot of thumbs up to the administration for doing their part in that as well. But if there's something that I could change as chair, it would be that the perception and changing that perception would be through educating the public a bit more, and definitely providing more education for our reps.
Thank you for such a detailed response. I'm going to turn it over now. Do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, let's see what he says, about the community, and I see, any issue that the city could assist with the community is that, the togetherness is very important to work together. How can the city, work together with the community?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear clearly.
That the city, issues that are coming from the community, that the city can assist the community with.
You're saying that if there are issues coming from our community that the city could assist the community with? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay.
With respect to the charter board, so yeah, sort of builds on what you're already talking about.
Oh, in respect to the charter board, I think if we had a full complement of 5 members, then we would obviously have more human resources. I could delegate duties where one person would be in charge of our social media page. We currently do not have that. We are living in a social media era. So in order to reach out to the communities, we can't hang posters anymore. We have to do it through social media, but we do not have that currently, again, because we don't have that full complement of members. No, if the city could help us, if the administration could help, if anyone from City Council knows someone who has what it takes to join the charter board and stick around, then that definitely would help. That definitely would help. So yes, that's one step that maybe City Council could take in assisting us. Maybe members of the administration could take in helping us to reach out to the community. I don't at this point have any direct charter-related complaints or inquiries coming from the community. But it's sad because when I speak to some community members about their charter, they have no idea about what it is. And again, it's sad because that's on us as a board. We haven't been doing our job. So if there's anything City Council could do in assisting in reaching out to the community, in assisting the charter board in reaching out to the community. So we would definitely like that.
Thank you.
My turn. First, I'd like to say thank you for the training that you did for council a couple weeks ago. I think it's always good to have a refresher on the charter. And I also agree with you that I think a lot of people in our community do not have a good understanding of the charter or the charter board. I'd like to make a suggestion, and that's each counselor has the chance to do a show on BCTV. It might be a really great topic to discuss the charter so that those people that want to know have a better understanding. And I don't know if Marcia would like to do that. And you've been involved with the charter probably longer than most of us. So it's just, I'm just tossing that out.
Okay.
But for tonight, I was wondering, could you give an example of a charter case for the people who are watching to give them an idea of a typical case that the charter deals with, the charter board deals with?
A typical case that the charter board deals with. All right, so I would say that a great majority of our complaints are unfortunately related to charter violations or alleged charter violations coming from the administration. Not the current administration, I must put that out there, but previous administrations. I'll say that these complaints vary. Majority of the time, obviously, they're not personal because that would be outside of our jurisdiction to even investigate. A lot of times, those complaints have to do with an action or inaction from one of our representatives who may refuse, whether willingly or unknowingly, refuse to take action on an issue that the charter requires some form of action on in a timely manner. I dare not give you this example that's floating in my mind because it would put names out there, and even though I believe this is at this point it's a public case, but let me try and give an example without going into details. For example, there was an action that was required by our mayor. I believe the mayor had a limited time frame in which to take that action. He went ahead and he basically exhausted all his options. And unfortunately, he had violated the charter. But we saw no need at that time to issue a citation because he had done what he was supposed to do in taking every single action necessary to try and be in compliance with the charter. So that's an example where a representative, in this case, it's a high-ranking rep, it's our mayor. He did not take action in time. And that inevitably led to a violation of the charter. In previous cases, we've seen blatant acts where a mayor simply refuses to do what the charter says. Knowingly refuses to do it. So again, that's two examples where on one hand, we have someone acting to be in compliance, but unfortunately, did not comply within the time frame that was required. And on the other hand, we have somebody who could have acted within the time frame, required time frame, but refused to do so. And in those cases, we we are obviously considerate of the actions that were taken by the person or inactions, and then we would issue a citation, or we would take actions after the fact according to the facts.
Very good answer.
Yes, thank you.
Any follow-up you wanted to say?
Could you say that again?
No, I was just asking Chris. So I'm going to be asking you a question that's somewhat related. I'm going to link it to what you just said. We know that Reading is the only city in PA and the United States to have a charter board, which, by the way, I was on the committee that got the amendments to the charter to create the charter board. I was the one that helped to circulate the petitions, not knowing at that point that that was going to be the case. Do you think the charter board is a valuable tool, considering that we're like the model for the whole country, having a charter board?
Absolutely. The charter board is invaluable. The board, even at this point where we may have like a relatively quiet 5 years, is absolutely necessary. Let me say this. If someone were to ask me, someone were to ask me 10 years ago if I believed in the charter board, being that it's the only board of its type in the entire US, I would probably say yes, even without knowing the cases that the charter board was burdened with at the time. I would probably say yes, because when I moved to Reading, the first thing I did was study the history of Reading. I watched the corrupt city, and that alone was frightening, and I wanted to leave Reading. If honestly, if I was given the opportunity, if I had the opportunity at that time, which I somewhat did, but if I were to have taken that opportunity, I would have left simply because of the history of Reading. And I didn't see where at that point we had the leader in place to change that. So when I joined the charter board, I realized that this board has an important role to play, or should I say correction, has been playing an important part in transforming the city government-wise. I believe Reading is the only city to have a charter board, because there's no city that's as unique as Reading. Not only its people, but its political history is so unique that if I were to even start talking about it now, I wouldn't have enough time. So when I studied the political history of Reading, it aligns perfectly with what the people of Reading were thinking back in the early 2000s. They were thinking, remember, these are descendants of the 1950s and 40s. They knew what happened back in that time. They knew that trusting their politicians wasn't something that they were willing to do at that point. They knew that Reading had a unique, I don't think the Philadelphia had the type of issues that Reading had, political issues that Reading had back in the 50s and 40s and even some parts in the 60s. So given the political history of Reading in the past, and even recently, I would say the charter board is absolutely necessary. We've seen over the last decade where a handful of cases, or maybe a few cases, have led to the charter board having to call on or federal government for assistance in cases that we obviously were outside of our jurisdiction at some point in our investigation. Would those cases have been resolved or even brought to the public if there were no charter board? I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And again, we don't know what the future holds, regardless of the fact that we're doing relatively good in terms of our government at this point, but we don't know what the future holds. So the charter board is absolutely relevant. We play a great role in providing some form of check and balance to our leaders. So yes, I think the charter board is more than relevant and necessary.
Okay, and I really want to thank you for your input. We're gonna need to move on because we have another person to be interviewed. But there's a lot of gems of wisdom that you've shared with. And just to let you know, I'm one of those people that through my family connections with the city was understanding of the criminality of Reading's past. And that's why I, initially wanted to be involved with anything that had to do with the charter. So thank you for carrying on that wisdom. So the way the process is, you have been through this before, Shane, so you know that we have to bring this back to council for a full vote, which will happen at next Monday's meeting. The committee will vote for a recommendation to move your name forward, and then we will be notifying you to the city clerk's office of the reappointment. Okay.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Sue.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay, so our next person to be interviewed is Anna Miller for the Animal Control Board. And because I know one of my fellow council members is a great lover of animals, I'm going to let Chris start this interview.
Good evening, Anna. How are you?
All right, how are you doing? Can you hear
Good,
me okay?
thank you. We can hear you. Thank
Okay.
you for appearing tonight. This is a reappointment, so we're just going to ask a few questions of you, and if you have any questions of us, just let us know. But in your words, could you just tell us a little bit about your role on the board?
Well, it was a learning experience, but my role on the board is basically just to hear some of the applications that have been made, some of the complaints that have been made, and some of the issues. And we vote on them either yay or nay, and then second them. But also to even if it's not doable, try to figure out plans as far as what can we do or what's the bigger picture. Like we had the one issue with pet shops within the city and stuff like that. And it was more about, we had to look at who would oversee it. Even though, yes, we can sit there and we can make the recommendation to go against pet shops in the city, who's going to regulate it? Who's going to, how it then affects the rest of the city resources as well.
Okay. I have my fellow counselors with me. We're going to take turns interviewing you and asking questions. Beside me is Counselor Wanda Negron from District 5, and beside her is Counselor Marcia Goodman-Hendersitz from District 2.
You got it.
So who wants to go next? How about Marcia?
Okay, and I appreciate your commitment to the Animal Control Board. Do you believe at this point that the Animal Control Board is doing well, and anything you would like to see improved upon?
Well, I'm still learning as far as what authority we really have and what is, so a lot of my first few meetings and stuff was just kind of listening and kind of getting an idea of how it works and what's going on. I do actually live in the city, and I was formerly employed with the Animal Rescue League. And I had a history with them for 10 years. So I know that there's a huge need in the city. So I guess part of it is just trying to navigate as far as, how recommendations and things like that go. So I'm learning as well, but I want to hopefully be able to provide a service and help others and while I'm learning what our authorities are as well.
Do you see
I hope I
anything-
answered your question.
Yeah, you did. I'm just going to follow up a little bit. And what you know about the needs to protect animals within the city, is there anything special to your heart that you think the city should be doing?
Well, I know that leash laws and things like that really, really need to be addressed because I do have dogs. And just 2 weeks ago, I was walking my dog around 12th and Marion Elementary School. And it's a very hot spot for walking dogs. And my dog, she's a 70-pound dog. And she does react, but she's not aggressive. She's just a hyper puppy. And there was somebody walking a very small dog who just kept coming after my dog. She was off leash. The person walking this dog was more than a block away with a small child. And I kept saying, get your dog, get your dog, get your dog. I threw a roll of poop bags, litter bags at the dog, trying to startle it away. And it just kept coming. And I mean, he just stood there and like laughed at the situation. And then he picks up his dog and tells me to go. And his dog was the aggressor. And I mean, in my opinion, I mean, we had histories with a lot of dog attacks, but like if I didn't have good control over my dog, she could have very easily picked up this dog and just finished it. And this happens so many times. I see people walking dogs off leash all the time, and there's these kind of scuffles and things that go on. And I know, our police officers are extremely overworked, and it's really difficult to police. But I mean, I just feel like these are just accidents waiting to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think people understand that dogs are feeling more safe when they're on leash. And when they're off leash, they get scared and very protective of themselves. So,
Especially with all the random fireworks that are going off in the city too.
right. Yeah. And that's another whole issue that unfortunately our legislator hasn't been successful in addressing, but thank you for your insight. I'm going to turn it over to Wanda.
Sure.
Okay, my question is really this way. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure meeting you because I also have a dog. 18 years old already. I am concerned about people finding out when it does to do anything that has to do with the animal. And my question would be, are there any issues that the city could assist with?
Issues as far as with animals?
Yeah, what can the city assist with?
Well, I mean, I do know that there's a lot of, a lot of education that needs to go around as far as with animals and just respectful ownership of animals, and just basic care too. And I know when I worked at the Animal Rescue League, we were trying to do that, but I know the resources are thin. So maybe a little more partnership with even, if not the Animal Rescue League, some of the other rescues and shelters and stuff to try to do more grassroots efforts. As far as even if we can't fund it, at least giving them a place that they would be able to use. Like Parks and Recreation is right next to me. And I know that there is a lot of young people activities that go on there, but in the off times, maybe offer it up and say, hey, do you want to have a shot clinic here? Or hey, can we have an educational seminar here?
And I know a more recent interview that we did for the board, we talked about more presence of the Animal Rescue League at different community events. I know you had one at your block earlier. Am I correct? It was Animal Rescue League was there.
Yeah.
And in fact, someone came back to me and said they were ready to adopt a dog after visiting that site. So anything.
Well, I think it's great that I think it's great that there is, in a block party, I know how this works, that they have a table with information and things like that, but I mean more where it's just going in and like saying, hey, anybody want to learn about this? Anybody want to find out more about this? That type of thing to try to engage the community more.
I think that's always good.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions for us at all?
It's like I said, just knowing more about what my role is and making sure I'm fulfilling that to the best.
And I think that would be more coming from the board chair. And but certainly if you have any questions, ask them directly.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like I said, I'm building those relationships and kind of getting to know my place a little bit more. And I have been more vocal in the past few meetings and offering a lot more suggestions and trying to just uh, problem solve and think outside the box with different situations that we have coming up.
That's very important. Okay, if you don't have any questions for us, the next part of the process is at our next Monday council meeting, the committee will recommend to put your name forward for reappointment. Okay, and
Thank
then
you.
you'll hear back from the city clerk's office from Michelle Smith, deputy city clerk, regarding the reappointment. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you for taking your time and all your commitment to our, I should say it's only our fur friends, because that's not the only thing the Animal Control Board oversees.
No.
Back in the day, and Shelley can remember this, do you remember when we had the alligators on Cotton Street?
Yes, ma'am.
And someone was walking an alligator on a leash up and down Cotton Street? So very interesting kinds of things can sometimes pop up in the city.
Oh, I know. A few years ago when we had the Savannah that came in from the city, it was a Savannah cat that was actually stray in the city.
I remember that too.
You know, one thing that I really hate about the animals, that I really hate is the commercial they show on TV. When they start doing a commercial about the animals and the rescue, I gotta turn my head.
Oh, you mean the ones that are suffering?
Yeah, I have to turn myself away because you know, how can anybody, do those things?
Mhm.
It's something that so terrible. So terrible.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
On that sad note, thank you very much for your commitment to the city, and we'll be in touch, okay?
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
And those advertisements to get people to give money, that's why they chose it.
Yeah, that's what it is, and I really hate that commercial.
Okay, so we have two candidates to consider for appointment. Let's see whether we have the votes from the committee to move forward. First is Shane McFarland.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think we could ask for anything better.
Great, really don't, into it.
Okay, and then of course, Ann.
The candidate for
And
citizens initiative.
Her application is still being reviewed in the mayor's office. So I believe she's attending as a member of the public, I would imagine. I didn't invite her specifically for interview.
We welcome any members of the public that are attending the meeting. So we also then have Anna Miller. Is the committee willing to move forward with Anna's recommendations? Okay. Thank you. And then we always go over, just to let you know, we always go over the pending applications, which is the document at the page 4 in the back here, where we know that things have been moved forward to the mayor's office. The first is Tanya Butler has already been appointed, but we don't have any other individuals. Now we do have one pending, Edith, I believe her name, if I have it correctly right. And thank you for District 2. And we'll be following that to make sure that your appointment moves forward for interviewing. Charter Board, Shane has been moved forward. We're still waiting for David Dombrowski.
This is the last seat for the HVAC board, right?
Right.
That's correct.
Seems like we've interviewed many.
We have, I think they were down 5 members, so we've made some good progress there. We have one more.
Now we have Tracy for both the zoning hearing and planning commission.
Correct. She initially applied for the planning commission and Linda spoke with her because we know that there will be some members on the zoning hearing board retiring to come in as an alternate to get some of education going there before we lose some of those longtime members. I'm waiting to hear back from the mayor's office whether they prefer her to serve on the planning commission or the zoning hearing board.
And the animal control board, we just interviewed Anna. Al Syed Steve, for reappointment? Are we waiting to hear back from the mayor's office, or is that when we move forward with?
He had an issue that he needed to handle when we did the background check. I'm waiting to hear back from him on that.
Okay, Anthony Orozco for the library.
Has just submitted his background clearances before I went on vacation, so he will be, I'm hoping he'll be able to be interviewed at the next meeting.
And then Edith also applied for the Equal Business Opportunity Advisory Board.
Yes, and I believe that she, because you can only serve on one, she would prefer to serve on this one, so I'll remove her name from the Citizens Initiative Commission.
And then very, very important, so we keep form, we need an appointment for the Blighted Property Review Committee. And that's Nicholas Irick, so I want to keep on top of that, with the mayor's office, to, make sure that one moves forward.
Yep,
Is that changing the number of members?
We did vote on that.
I think was introduced
I was introduced.
and
right?
you'll have it for vote on
On Monday.
Monday, next Monday.
So
Okay.
then we'll go from 7 to 5.
Right, so going from 7 to 5, is there still a vacancy?
I believe there is. Nick is a reappointment,
Okay.
so I believe there is possibly 2 vacancies there. But that will be taken care of if you go from 7 to 5.
Okay.
It's a good question. Okay, any other business for the committee this time? Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn then?
So move.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're a very efficient committee, as you can see, on there.